The shuttle descended through the purple clouds of Station Keller 9. And Sergeant First Class Yoon Seo-yeon watched the massive structure come into view through her window. A spinning wheel of metal and glass that housed the most prestigious military academy in the known galaxy. A place where young warriors from dozens of species came to learn the art of war. She had read the files during her 3-week journey from Earth. And she knew what waited for her down there. Knew that the Galactic Unity Academy had trained soldiers for over 2,000 years before humans even discovered fire. Knew that her assignment here was considered either a great honor or elaborate joke, depending on who she asked. The shuttle docked with a gentle thud, and Seo-yeon gathered her single bag of belongings before stepping into the arrival terminal where a tall figure waited for her. "You are the human instructor," the figure said, and Seo-yeon recognized him as a Dravini from the wolf-like features of his face, the gray fur that covered his body, and the yellow eyes that studied her with obvious disappointment. "Sergeant First Class Yoon Seo-yeon," she replied with a slight bow of her head. "Reporting for duty as requested." The Dravini's ears flattened against his skull in what she knew was a sign of displeasure among his kind. "I am Senior Instructor Dranthith," he said, "and I have been assigned to show you to your quarters and explain your duties. Though I must confess I do not understand why the Academy Council agreed to this exchange program." Seo-yeon kept her face neutral as she followed him through corridors filled with cadets and instructors from species she had only read about in intelligence briefings. And she noticed how they all stopped to stare at her. This small human woman walking among giants and predators and beings with natural weapons built into their very bodies. Humans have only been part of the galactic community for 40 years. Dranth continued as they walked. "And while your species has shown certain talents in medicine and engineering and diplomacy, combat instruction is not typically considered among your strengths." "I understand," Seo-yeon said. Simply they arrived at a small room that would serve as her quarters, and Dranth handed her a datapad containing her assignment. "You have been given Cohort 12, he said, and something in his voice made Seo-yeon look up sharply. "Is there something I should know about Cohort 12? Dranthith's muzzle twisted into what might have been a smile on a human face. "They are 6 cadets from warrior species who have proven difficult for previous instructors," he explained. "And 3 instructors have already requested transfers rather than continue working with them. So the council decided that since you were coming anyway, you might as well be given a challenge worthy of human stubbornness." He left her alone then, and Seo-yeon sat on the edge of her narrow bed and opened the files on her new students. The first 2 were Keth Ari, an insectoid species with 4 arms and natural blade-like protrusions on their limbs. And the files identified them as Kethsal and Vanzara, both from noble bloodlines, both with disciplinary records longer than Seo-yeon's arm. The next 2 were Vorax, reptilian predators covered in natural armor, with teeth designed for tearing flesh and claws that could cut through steel, and their names were Vrex and Sora. And Seo-yeon paused when she read that Vrex had lost his entire family in a border raid 3 years ago. The final 2 were Dravini, like Senior Instructor Dranth, a male named Keldon and a female named Drankai. And the file noted that Drankai was the first member of her pack to ever attend the academy, a fact that apparently caused her considerable stress. Seo-yeon memorized every detail in those files before she slept that night. And when the station's artificial sun rose the next morning, she made her way to Training Hall 7, where Cohort 12 waited for her. The 6 cadets stood in a loose formation when she entered, and she could feel their eyes on her, measuring her. Dismissing her, Kethsal stepped forward. His 4 arms crossed over his chest in a gesture of challenge, and his mandibles clicked as he spoke. "So you are the human they sent to teach us," he said. "And I must say I expected someone larger. Or at least someone with visible weapons. The other cadets laughed. A harsh sound that echoed off the metal walls. Sio Yeon walked to the center of the room and turned to face them. Her hands clasped behind her back in a parade rest position she had held 1,000 times before. "I am Sergeant First Class Yoon Seo Yeon," she said, her voice calm and clear. "And I have been assigned as your combat instructor for the remainder of your training cycle." "Combat instructor?" Venzara repeated with a clicking laugh. "And what can a human teach us about combat when your species has no claws? No fangs, no natural armor, and no venom?" "Perhaps she will teach us to run away," Rex suggested, his reptilian face twisting into a cruel grin. "Since that is what humans do best, according to my grandfather, who fought them at the Battle of Centauri Ridge." Seo Yeon did not respond to the insult, and instead she simply looked at each of them in turn, meeting their eyes without fear or anger. "Humans do not belong in combat roles," Kathsal declared, taking another step toward her. "And you belong in a medical bay or a logistics center or perhaps a kitchen. But not here among warriors." Still Seo Yeon said nothing, and her silence seemed to unsettle them more than any response could have. "Training begins tomorrow at dawn," she finally said, "and I expect all of you to be here on time and ready to learn." She turned and walked toward the exit, and behind her she heard Kathsol's voice rise in frustration. "We will show her tomorrow what real warriors think of human instructors," he said to the others, "and we will give her a welcome she will never forget." Seo Yeon heard every word, and as she walked back to her quarters, she allowed herself a small smile, because she had faced worse than arrogant young cadets in her 15 years of service, had looked death in the face on 3 different worlds and walked away each time. And tomorrow she would begin teaching these children what it truly meant to be a warrior. The night passed quietly, and Seo Yeon slept without dreams, her mind already preparing for what the morning would bring. The artificial dawn broke across Station Kether 9, and Seo Yeon rose from her bed with the same discipline that had carried her through 15 years of military service. Washing her face with cold water and pulling her dark hair back into a tight bun before dressing in her standard Terran instructor uniform, she arrived at Training Hall 7 exactly at the appointed hour, and the door slid open to reveal a scene that would have made most instructors turn and run. All 6 cadets stood in a wide circle around the center of the training floor, and each of them held ceremonial training blades in their hands, weapons that were blunted but still capable of breaking bones and leaving terrible bruises. Kathsal stood directly in front of the door, his 4 arms each holding a curved blade that gleamed under the harsh lights, and behind him the others had positioned themselves to cut off any possible escape route. "Good morning, Instructor," Kathsal said, his mandibles clicking in what Seo Yeon recognized as amusement. "And we hope you slept well, because today we have prepared a special lesson for you." Seo Yeon stepped into the room, and the door slid shut behind her with a sound like a closing trap. She knew that somewhere in this station, Academy monitors were watching through hidden cameras, recording everything that happened in this hall. And she knew that several faculty members had probably received quiet notifications about this little demonstration. They wanted to see her fail, wanted to see the arrogant human put in her place, and they had given these cadets the perfect opportunity to do it, according to Academy regulations. Venzara said from her position on the left, "Instructors may be challenged to practical demonstrations at any time, and if an instructor cannot defend themselves adequately, they may be asked to resign their position. We are challenging you now," Vrex added, his tail swishing across the floor with predatory excitement. "And we want to see what a human combat instructor can actually do when faced with real warriors." Seo Yeon walked toward the center of the circle, moving past Kathsal without a glance in his direction, and she stopped in the exact middle of the training. Floor, where she was surrounded on all sides, she did not draw. Weapon, she did not take a fighting stance. She simply stood with her hands clasped behind her back and looked at Quetzal with calm brown eyes. "Why do you want me to fail?" she asked. And her voice was soft and curious rather than angry or afraid. The question hung in the air like smoke. And Quetzal's mandibles stopped clicking. "What?" he demanded. "I asked why you want me to fail," Xiao Yan repeated. "Because I have read your file, Quetzal. And I know that you are the third son of House Quetzvoran, which means you will never inherit your family's holdings no matter how hard you train or how many battles you win." Quetzal's grip tightened on his blades. But she was already turning to look at the others. "And I know that you, Vanzara, requested this posting specifically because your older sister is already a decorated warrior. And you are desperate to prove that you are not just living in her shadow." Vanzara's compound eyes widened in surprise. "Vrax," Xiao Yan continued, her voice still gentle. "You were 9 years old when raiders killed your parents and your 3 siblings. And you have been angry every single day since then, looking for someone to fight because fighting is easier than grieving." The young Varax flinched as if she had struck him. "Sora, you nearly failed your entrance examinations. And you have been terrified every day that someone will discover you do not belong here." Sora lowered her blade slightly, her reptilian face showing shock. "Keldon, your packmates back home call you weak because you prefer strategy to direct combat. And you joined this academy to prove them wrong." The male Dravani's ears pressed flat against his skull. "And Drankai, you are the first of your pack to ever attend this academy. And the weight of their expectations is crushing you, because if you fail, they will blame themselves for reaching too high." Drankai made a small sound in her throat, and Xiao Yan saw moisture gathering in her yellow eyes. The training hall had gone very quiet, and the cadets no longer looked like predators circling prey. They looked like children who had just been seen for the first time. "You want me to fail, because it is easier to hate a stranger than to face your own fears," Xiao Yan said. "And you want to prove your strength by breaking something because you feel broken inside." She turned slowly, meeting each of their eyes in turn. "But I am not your enemy. And I am not here to prove that humans are better than you. I am here because someone asked me to teach. And teaching is what I intend to do." Quetzal's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of confusion among his species. "You should be afraid," he said. And his voice was no longer mocking but genuinely puzzled. "You should be running or begging, or at least trying to defend yourself. But you are just standing there like you do not care if we hurt you." "I am not afraid," Xiao Yan admitted, "because I have been afraid before. I have been so afraid that I could not breathe or think or move. And I learned that fear is just a feeling, and feelings can be controlled." She took one step toward Quetzal, and he took one step back without thinking. "You are holding 4 blades, and you have 3 friends behind me with weapons of their own. And my heart rate has not increased by a single beat. Do you know why?" Quetzal shook his head. "Because I know that you are not killers," Xiao Yan said. "You are children who have been taught that violence is strength and mercy is weakness. And you think that hurting me will make you feel powerful, but it will not. It will just make you feel empty." She extended one hand toward him, palm up, offering rather than threatening. "So you have a choice right now. You can strike me down and end my career and prove that you are exactly what everyone expects you to be, another violent cadet who could not be taught. Or you can lower your weapons and let me show you something that none of your previous instructors ever could." The silence stretched out, and Xiao Yan could hear her own heartbeat in her ears. Steady and slow like the ticking of an ancient clock, Rex lowered his blade first, the weapon clattering against the floor as his clawed hands began to tremble. And Xiao Yan saw tears running down his scaled face. Then Drankai dropped her weapon. And Sora followed, and Keldon placed his blades gently on the ground. Then Zara looked at Quetzal, waiting for his decision, and when he finally lowered his 4 blades, she lowered hers as well. Quetzal's mandibles clicked softly in what Xiao Yan recognized as the Cathari expression of shame. "What can you teach us?" he asked. And his voice was barely a whisper. Xiao Yan smiled. And it was the first real smile she had allowed herself since arriving at this station. "How to win without losing yourselves," she said. "And how to be strong without being cruel. And how to face your fears instead of running from them." She looked around at the 6 young warriors who had come here to break her and had instead found something they did not expect. "Now," she said, "let us begin." Word spread through the academy like fire through dry grass. And by midday, every instructor and cadet had heard some version of the story. How the human woman had walked into a room full of armed warriors and disarmed them with nothing but words. Senior instructor Dran found Xiao Yan in the dining hall that evening. And he sat down across from her without asking permission. "The monitoring feeds from Training Hall 7 have been watched by every senior instructor on this station," he said, his yellow eyes studying her with new interest. "And several of them have requested copies for their personal archives." Xiao Yan continued eating her meal. A simple bowl of rice and vegetables that the station's food synthesizers had managed to produce after she uploaded some recipes from Earth. "Commander Vethorin is particularly interested," Dran Veth continued, "and he asked me to inform you that he will be observing your training sessions from now on. Commander Viharen trains Cohort 1. As Xiao Yan said, the elite cadets who have won the inter-cohort tournament for 12 consecutive years. You have done your research. I always do." Dram leaned forward, and his voice dropped to something almost like respect. "What you did in that training hall should not have worked," he said, "because those cadets are from predator species, and predator instincts respond to fear and aggression. They do not respond to calm." "You are wrong," Xiao Yan replied. "Predator instincts respond to prey behavior, and prey runs and fights and panics, but I did none of those things. So their instincts did not know what to do with me, and if they had attacked anyway?" Xiao Yan set down her eating utensils and looked directly into Dramthith's eyes. "Then I would have defended myself," she said, "and they would have learned a different lesson. But I prefer teaching without violence when possible." Dramth left her alone after that, and Xiao Yan finished her meal in silence, thinking about the days ahead. The next morning she arrived at Training Hall 7 to find all 6 cadets already waiting for her, standing in a neat formation with no weapons in sight. "Good morning," she said. "And I see you have decided to give me a chance. We talked last night," Quetzal said. And his voice was different now, humbled somehow. "And we agreed that we have never had an instructor like you. And we want to know what you meant when you said you could teach us to win without losing ourselves." Xiao Yan nodded and walked to the front of the room. "First, I need you to understand something about humans," she began. "Because we are not like you. We have no claws or fangs or armor or venom. And our ancestors survived on Earth, not because they were the strongest or the fastest, but because they could adapt and endure and think." She began to pace slowly in front of them. "Humans developed something called martial arts thousands of years before we discovered fire. And these were systems of combat that taught warriors how to control their bodies and their minds. And the greatest masters of these arts were not the ones who could hit the hardest, but the ones who could remain calm when everything around them was chaos. Calm is weakness," Rex said. But there was uncertainty in his voice now. "Calm is the ultimate weapon," Xiao Yan corrected. "Because panic makes you stupid and anger makes you blind. But calm lets you see clearly and think quickly and respond precisely. She turned to face them directly. "I am going to teach you to breathe," she said. "I know that sounds simple, but you will be surprised how difficult it actually is." The cadets exchanged confused glances, but none of them argued for the next 3 hours. Seo Yin taught them breathing techniques that Buddhist monks on Earth had developed over centuries. Methods of controlling the flow of air in and out of the body that could slow the heart rate and clear the mind. Quetzal struggled the most because the Cathari breathed differently than humans, through spiracles in their thorax rather than through their mouths. But Seo Yin worked with him patiently until he found a rhythm that worked for his biology. By the end of the session, all 6 cadets could sit in stillness for 10 minutes without their minds wandering. And while this seemed like a small accomplishment, it was the foundation upon which everything else would be built. "Tomorrow we will do this again," Seo Yin said as they prepared to leave, and the day after that, and every day until it becomes as natural as blinking. "When do we learn to fight?" Sora asked. "You already know how to fight," Seo Yin replied. "What you need to learn is when to fight and when not to, and how to stay in control of yourself when your body is screaming at you to lose control." Days turned into weeks, and the cadets of Cohort 12 began to change in ways that surprised even themselves. Quetzal discovered that his blade work improved dramatically when he stopped trying to overwhelm his opponents with raw aggression, and instead moved with calm precision, each of his 4 arms working in perfect harmony. Venzara found that she could read her opponents better when her mind was clear, anticipating their moves before they made them, turning their strength against them. Vrex struggled more than the others because the rage inside him was deep and old and hungry, but he kept coming back to training every day, kept trying to find the stillness that Seo Yin promised was there one night. After a particularly difficult session, Seo Yin found him sitting alone in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. "I cannot do it," he said without turning around. "I cannot be calm when all I feel is anger." Seo Yin sat down beside him, close enough that he could feel her presence, but not so close that it felt threatening. "Tell me about your family," she said. Vrex was silent for a long moment, and then he began to speak, and the words poured out of him like water breaking through a dam. Stories about his mother who taught him to hunt, and his father who showed him how to read the stars, and his siblings who used to chase each other through the forests of their homeworld. He talked for hours, and Seo Yin listened without interrupting, and when he finally fell silent, his face was wet with tears he had been holding back for 3 years. "The anger will not go away," Seo Yin said softly, "but it does not have to control you, and grieving does not make you weak. It makes you real." She told him about her younger brother, who had died in the Proxima incident when his ship was destroyed by raiders who never faced justice. And she told him about the years she spent drowning in rage before she finally learned to let herself feel the sadness underneath. "I still miss him every day," she admitted. "But the pain does not own me anymore, and someday the pain will not own you either." Rex looked at her with new eyes, seeing not just a human instructor, but a fellow survivor. Someone who understood what it meant to lose everything and still find a way to keep going. "Thank you," he whispered. And it was the first sincere thing he had said since arriving at the academy. The next morning, Rex sat in meditation longer than any of the other cadets. And when he opened his eyes, there was something different in them. Something that looked almost like peace. 2 months passed on Station Kether 9, and the cadets of Cohort 12 became something that the Academy had never seen before. Their training sessions started before dawn each day with an hour of meditation and breathing exercises. And then they moved into physical drills that Seo Yin had designed specifically for each of their species. Quetzal and Venzara practiced flowing blade patterns that emphasize precision over power, their forearms moving in sequences so smooth that watching them was like watching a dance. Rex, and Sora, sparred with each other using their natural weapons. But now they moved with intention rather than blind aggression. Each strike measured in deliberate. Keldan and Drankai worked on pack tactics, learning to move as one unit, to communicate without words, to trust each other completely. But the most remarkable change was not in their bodies, but in their minds. Quetzal no longer snapped at other cadets in the corridors, and Vanzara stopped trying to prove herself better than everyone around her. Rex smiled sometimes now, a rare and precious thing. And Sora had gained enough confidence to speak up in tactical lectures. Keldan discovered that his love of strategy was actually a strength when combined with the ability to stay calm under pressure. And Drankai had stopped flinching whenever someone mentioned her pack. The other instructors noticed these changes, and they began showing up to watch Cohort 12's training sessions, standing in the observation gallery with expressions of disbelief on their various faces. They are not the same cadets, Senior Instructor Dranvith said to Seo Yeon one morning. And I have trained warriors for 40 years. But I have never seen a transformation like this. They were always capable of this, Seo Yeon replied. They just needed someone to show them how. Commander Vethorin watched from the shadows, and his expression was not pleased, because Cohort 1 had been the Academy's pride for over a decade. And now this human woman was creating something that might challenge their dominance. The announcement came on a cold morning when frost covered the station's outer windows. All cadets and instructors were summoned to the Great Hall, and the Academy Chancellor herself stood at the podium, her ancient Cathari body draped in ceremonial robes. The annual inter-cohort tournament will be held in 3 weeks, she declared, and all cohorts are required to participate. The hall buzzed with excitement, because the tournament was the most important event of the Academy year. A chance for cohorts to prove their worth against each other in simulated combat. This year, the Chancellor continued, we have received special attention from the Galactic Council, and representatives from over 20 species will attend to observe our cadets in action. Seo Yeon felt the weight of eyes on her, and she knew that this tournament would be different. That it would be a test, not just for her cadets, but for the entire concept of human military instruction after the assembly. Commander Vethorin approached her in the corridor. He was a massive Cathari, taller than Quetzal by a full head, with blade arms that had claimed the lives of enemies on a dozen worlds. Your cadets have improved, he acknowledged. But improvement and victory are different things. And Cohort 1 has won this tournament 12 times in a row. I am aware, Seo Yan said. My cadets are stronger, faster, and more experienced than yours, Vethorin continued. And they have been training since childhood for moments like this. While your cadets spent years wasting their potential on anger and fear. We will see. Vethorin leaned down until his mandibles were inches from her face, and his voice dropped to a threatening whisper. If your cadets lose badly enough, the Council will use it as proof that humans have no place teaching combat, and your little experiment will end before it truly begins. He walked away before she could respond, and Seo Yeon stood alone in the corridor, thinking about the weeks ahead. That evening, she gathered Cohort 12 in Training Hall 7 and told them about the tournament. We will face all the other cohorts in elimination rounds, she explained. But our real challenge will be Cohort 1, because they are the best this Academy has to offer, and they have never lost. Then we will be the first to beat them, Quetzal said. And there was no arrogance in his voice now, only determination. They are stronger than us, Rex pointed out. And they have been training together for years, while we have only had 2 months. Strength is not everything, Seo Yeon replied. And time is not everything either. What matters is how you use what you have. She looked at each of them in turn. These 6 young warriors who had come so far from the angry children who tried to intimidate her on that first day for the next 3 weeks. "We will train harder than we have ever trained before," she said. "And we will face Cohort 1 not as victims waiting to be defeated, but as warriors who have mastered themselves." "How can we beat them?" Drankai asked. "When they have every advantage," Seo Yeon smiled. And there was something ancient and knowing in her eyes on Earth. "There is a saying that the battle is won before it is fought," she said. "And it means that the warrior who enters combat with a clear mind and a steady heart has already defeated the warrior who enters with confusion and rage. Cohort 1 is used to opponents who fear them," Vanzara said slowly, understanding dawning in her compound eyes. "And they are used to opponents who try to match their aggression." "Exactly," Seo Yeon confirmed. "They have never faced opponents who refuse to be afraid, who refuse to be angry, who move like water around their attacks and strike only when the moment is perfect." Kefzal's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "You want us to be what you were that first day," he said. "When we surrounded you with blades and you did not even flinch." "Yes," Seo Yen said. "Because on that day you had every advantage. And you still could not touch me. Not because I was stronger or faster, but because I was calm and you were not." The cadets exchanged glances. And something passed between them, a shared understanding. A collective decision. "We will not let you down," Rex said. Speaking for all of them, Seo Yin felt her heart swell with pride. Because these were not the same broken children who had tried to drive her away 2 months ago. They were warriors now. True warriors, and in 3 weeks, they would show the galaxy what that meant. "Then let us begin," she said. "And let us show them what calm can do." The tournament arena was the largest structure on Station Keller 9. A massive oval of reinforced metal and energy shields that could contain the most violent combat without risk to spectators. 20,000 beings filled the stands. Representatives from species across the known galaxy. And among them sat the human ambassador to the Galactic Council. A gray-haired woman named Dr. Chen, who had specifically requested permission to attend. Seo Yeon stood with her cadets in the preparation area, watching through a view screen as Cohort 1 entered the arena to thunderous applause. Commander Vethoran's warriors were impressive by any standard. 6 massive Cathari, who moved with the confidence of undefeated champions. Their blade arms gleaming under the arena lights. "They look strong," Sora whispered. "They are strong," Seo Yeon replied. "But strength without control is just noise." The elimination rounds had gone well for Cohort 12, and they had defeated 3 other cohorts without a single member being eliminated. Moving through their opponents like ghosts, striking from unexpected angles and retreating before counterattacks could land. Now they faced a final round, 6 against 6. And the winner would claim the championship that Cohort 1 had held for over a decade. Kethsel approached Seo Yeon, and she was struck by how much he had changed since that first day. The arrogance replaced by quiet confidence. The aggression refined into precision. "We will not disappoint you," he said. "You could never disappoint me," she replied. "Because I am already proud of everything you have become." The announcement came over the arena speakers, calling both cohorts to the combat floor. And Seo Yeon watched her cadets walk toward destiny. The arena fell silent as the 2 teams took their positions at opposite ends of the field. Cathvarn, the leader of Cohort 1, was even larger than his instructor. A mountain of chitin and blade, and he pointed one of his arm blades directly at Kefsal. "I will enjoy breaking the humans' pets," he shouted. Loud enough for the entire arena to hear. Kefsal said nothing, and his compound eyes were calm, reflecting no fear and no anger. The starting signal sounded, and Cohort 1 charged forward with the overwhelming aggression that had crushed every opponent they had ever faced. But Cohort 12 did not charge to meet them. Instead, they moved apart, spreading across the arena like water flowing around stones. And when Cohort 1's charge found only empty air, confusion flickered across their faces. Rex struck first, darting in from the side to tag one of the enemy cadets on the back before spinning away. And the hit registered on the scoring system, drawing first blood for Cohort 12. The crowd murmured in surprise. Kethform roared in frustration and redirected his team. But Cohort 12 was never where they expected. Flowing and shifting and striking from angles that seemed impossible, Seo Yeon watched from the instructor's platform, her face revealing nothing, but inside her heart was racing with hope. Drankai and Kalden worked together like extensions of the same mind, herding an opponent into a corner where Venzara waited with blades ready. And another elimination registered on the board. Cohort 1 had never faced opponents who refused to be afraid, who moved with such fluid calm that it was like fighting smoke. Kethvern screamed at his teammates to hold formation, but his own rage was bleeding into his movements, making him predictable, making him sloppy one by one. The cadets of Cohort 1 fell, tagged and eliminated by opponents who seemed to know exactly where they would be before they got there, until finally only Kethvern remained, surrounded by all 6 members of Cohort 12. "This is impossible," he hissed, his blade arms twitching with barely contained fury. "Nothing is impossible," Kefsal replied, and his voice was perfectly calm. "You are stronger than me and faster than me, and you have been training longer than me, but you are angry, and I'm not. And that is why you have already lost." Kethvern charged with all the power his massive body could generate, his 4 blade arms spinning in patterns designed to overwhelm any defense. But Kethsal did not defend. He simply stepped aside at the last moment, moving with such precision that Kethvern's S-blades missed him by millimeters. And as the larger cadet stumbled past, Kethsal reached out and touched him once on the center of his back. The elimination signal sounded, and the arena exploded into chaos. Cohort 1 had lost their 12-year winning streak, broken by 6 cadets who had been considered the worst in the academy only 3 months ago. Seo Yeon closed her eyes for a moment, letting the noise wash over her, and when she opened them again, she found the human ambassador standing beside her. "That was remarkable," Dr. Chen said. "And I suspect you have changed more than just these cadets today." In the arena, the cadets of other cohorts had begun applauding, and even some of the instructors joined them, recognizing that they had witnessed something extraordinary. Commander Vethoran pushed through the crowd until he stood before Seo Yeon, and his expression was unreadable. "How?" he demanded. "The warrior who masters themselves has already won," Seo Yeon replied. "And that is what humans learned through 10,000 years of fighting each other. That the deadliest weapon is not the body but the mind." Vethoran stared at her for a long moment, and then he inclined his head in what might have been respect. "Perhaps there is more to human instruction than I believed," he admitted. "And perhaps I have things to learn from you." The celebration lasted late into the station's artificial night. But eventually, Seo Yeon slipped away from the noise and found her way to the observation deck. She was not surprised when Kethsal found her there. He approached and stood beside her, looking out at the stars, and for a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Kethsal lowered himself into the Kethari posture of deepest respect, his blade arms folded against his body, and his head bowed. "I owe you an apology," he said. "Because when you first arrived, I thought humans were weak. I thought you had no place among warriors, and I tried to break you. I remember," Seo Yin said gently. "But I understand now what I did not understand then," Kethsil continued. "Because humans are not weak. You are weapons that have spent thousands of years sharpening yourselves. And your strength is not in your bodies, but in your ability to control what others cannot." He rose and looked at her with eyes that held something like wonder. "You changed everything for us," he said. And I do not know how to thank you for that. Seo Yeon placed a hand on his shoulder, a gesture of connection and respect. Thank me by teaching the next generation, she said, because that is how strength grows. Not by hoarding it, but by passing it on. Kefsel's mandibles clicked in understanding. I will, he promised. And I will make sure they know that a human taught me everything I know. Seo Yeon smiled, looking out at the vast darkness of space and the countless stars that represented worlds she would never see somewhere out there. Her brother rested among the stars, and she hoped that wherever he was proud of what she had accomplished here. That is all any teacher can ask for, she said, and in the silence of the observation deck, surrounded by stars and possibilities, she felt at peace.